The wind howled low across the barren land as twilight fell, carrying with it the scent of dust and loneliness. And at the edge of the prairie, beneath a sky bruised with storm clouds, a rancher named Daniel Calloway tightened the reins of his horse and scanned the horizon for signs of life. He had been riding for hours, searching for stray cattle lost after the storm, but what he found instead made his heart stutter in his chest. Near the crooked fence line where the land dropped into a dry creek bed, he saw a woman collapsed against a fallen log, her dress torn and muddied, her bonnet gone, her hair tangled by wind and rain. He dismounted quickly, his boots sinking into the wet soil, and approached her cautiously, for she looked like a fragile ghost rising from the earth, her shoulders trembling with exhaustion. She lifted her head when his shadow fell over her, and her eyes, deep, sorrowful, glistening like broken glass, met his, holding a weight that made him freeze mid-step. Her lips parted, cracked and pale, and in a voice that carried both despair and resignation, she whispered, "It's too late for me." Daniel's breath caught, the words hitting him like a bullet to the chest, because he could hear the finality in them, the kind of surrender he had seen in dying cattle during harsh winters, in men who had lost everything during the war. But this was no cow, no soldier. This was a woman, alive yet fading, her spirit nearly crushed beneath the burden of something she had endured alone. He crouched beside her, removing his hat, his calloused hands hovering as though he feared touching her might break her completely. "No, it ain't too late," he said, his voice rough with emotion he hadn't expected to feel. "Not while you're still breathing." But she shook her head slowly, tears streaking down her dirt-smudged cheeks, whispering again, "You don't understand. I've lost too much. There's nothing left for me." Daniel wanted to argue, to shake her, to tell her that life was never too far gone, but when her gaze locked onto his again, something inside him faltered. In those eyes he saw not weakness, but a history of suffering, wounds invisible yet deeper than anything flesh could show, and for the first time in years, he felt utterly powerless, frozen under the sheer gravity of her pain. He stayed there, frozen in silence, not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much, and in that moment, he realized that sometimes words weren't enough to save someone. You had to give them reason, you had to give them hope, you had to show them they weren't alone. The storm finally broke that night, rain pouring down in heavy sheets that rattled against the roof of Daniel's cabin as he carried the fragile woman inside, wrapping her in his old wool blanket and setting her by the fire. She resisted at first, weakly pushing against his chest, muttering again and again that it was too late, that she was beyond saving, but he refused to listen, his arms steady, his voice calm as he told her she wasn't going to face this darkness alone. Her name, he learned through halting whispers, was Evelyn, a mail-order bride who had been abandoned when the man meant to marry her turned cruel, leaving her with nothing but shame and scars, both inside and out. She spoke in fragments, her eyes distant, her hands trembling as though every memory she carried was a chain pulling her deeper into despair, and Daniel listened, not interrupting, not judging, just holding space for the words she was brave enough to release. As the firelight flickered across her face, he found himself staring, not at her wounds, not at her brokenness, but at the strength it took for her to still be breathing after all she had endured. When she whispered once more, "It's too late for me," Daniel leaned closer, his voice steady though his heart raced, and said, "If it were truly too late, you wouldn't be here looking me in the eyes. You'd be gone. But you ain't gone, Evelyn. You're right here. And as long as you are, it ain't too late." She blinked at him, tears welling again, and for a moment the storm outside seemed to mirror the storm within her, wild, relentless, but beginning to break. Daniel reached out, his rough hand covering hers, and this time she didn't pull away. Instead, her trembling stilled just enough for her to hold on to him, as if clinging to a lifeline she didn't dare believe in. They sat in silence, the fire warming the cold that had settled in her bones. And though nothing was magically healed, though her past still weighed heavy, a flicker of something new sparked in her chest. The possibility that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't as lost as she thought. Daniel, for his part, felt the shift too. A stirring in his heart he hadn't known since the war. A reason to fight not for cattle, not for land, but for someone's soul. He had frozen when she first whispered her surrender. But now he vowed never to freeze again, never to let her drown in hopelessness without reaching out. And in that cabin, on that storm-torn night, two broken souls began the fragile work of saving each other, step by step, moment by moment, truth by truth. And dear viewers, if Evelyn's whispered despair and Daniel's frozen heart spoke to you, if you believe it's never too late to find light in the darkness, then make sure you subscribe to this channel. Each story we share brings hope, courage, and love to life, reminding us that even in the hardest storms, we are never truly alone. Subscribe now because more powerful stories are waiting just for you.